What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a special Thursday edition of Spike Week 2021 Best Ball content brought to you by RotoGrinders. On Thursdays, moving forward, we started this last week. On Thursdays, moving forward, I'm drafting. We're actually doing some drafts, not just me rambling about all the different strategies and all the names of the different strategies. And so today, I wanted to start bringing somebody in. I wanted to bring in somebody else, so you also didn't just have to hear me, and there was really no one better to bring in than one of the only other people that was out here grinding NFL content in May and in the best ball streets. So I brought in Hayden Winks from Underdog. Hayden, thanks for joining. How's the best ball summer going?
Hot best ball summer is doing great. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's just one of those things where we're only talking about best ball like every single day. So that's what Josh Norris and I are doing. We do 4 shows per week. So we've thought about every little strategy, player, all that stuff. It's like the only thing we're doing. When I was at Roto World, we had like a lot more other things to worry about, but just at Underdog, it's like literally just best ball. So things have changed.
That's really true, and it's kind of interesting that you bring that up, because even already over like the course of the last year, Underdog has really started to put out new types of contests. Right. And like that's actually, I think, what has got me so heavy into NFL best ball this offseason and just like diving in full fledged is the light kind of came on. It started to click. Like when I started to see some of the stuff that Underdog was doing, like, the NBA stuff, mid-season contests, right? I loved the NBA playoff best ball format. Like that was really fun. Rookies and sophomores, you've talked about a little bit on your shows. And like there's all these different formats, different buy-in levels or whatever. So I do think, we were talking a little bit before the show. There's a little bit of a grind, like we get to this point of the summer, like saying kind of the same best ball stuff over and over again. But like with Underdog, it is kind of refreshing. Like we do have some different things to talk about, like rookies and sophomores and other stuff like that.
Definitely, yeah. The rookies and sophomore stuff even launched before the NFL draft. So there's a lot of new things that we're doing with like game theory things where like, all right, we don't even know where like the players are being drafted at. And like you could try to create correlation between like, all right, we think Jalen Waddle might go 6 overall to the Dolphins. I'll pair him up with Tua. And then like the NFL playoff best ball, I think that is the best ball structure there is. Cause like it is multiple levels of like, you have to understand the bracket, read rankings, stacking. It just gets really in depth. I think that's probably the best contest. And of course, then you have like Best Ball Mania too, is just the bread and butter.
Yeah, the playoff thing is, I'm really excited for that. Like an in-season contest, right there last year. I think there was like, even like week 4, second half, all that kind of stuff. The playoff one is like, oh man, I like the Galaxy bring some stuff, and playoffs we can get real crazy with, like you said, stacks and just playing. It's such a game theory contest. Like we like to pretend like last year it kind of played out close to the chalk way, right, with Bucks and Chiefs. But like we like to pretend like we can predict those things way more than we can. And like the Vikings might go to the Super Bowl, right? And but no one's drafting for that. So.
And then with like the Chiefs, like you still have to like factor in they have the bye week, so you still have to advance the first week. So like it's not as simple as just like I'm just going to stack the Chiefs. Like you have to, all right, how am I advancing out of the first round? So like it's a huge balance thing. That's why I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger. And I think maybe some of the mid-year best ball stuff is going to get bigger and bigger too. It's just a nice change of pace. And when everyone's playing DFS, to kind of actually sit there and have to do a little bit of draft and a little more game theory against your actual opponents in the draft lobby. So expect more little things coming up. We're in our chat all the time thinking about new types of tournaments to do. So you'll start seeing these pop up maybe next off season too.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's one thing I know, and I feel confident in, just even over the last year of Underdog, is like the limit is going to be pushed, and new and creative things are going to be coming out. Now, I was already excited for like these typical best ball contests. Now I'm starting to think through like freaking playoff best ball strategies in my head. Like I think that's probably about the time when I should stop and we should hop in one of these drafts. So we're gonna do Best Ball Mania 2. This one might take. We'll see. I don't know. I haven't done Best Ball Mania 2 in a little while. So that was.
We got lucky.
We got lucky. We were the 12th, but 102. That'll work. That's easy.
Even luckier. Luckier.
That's good. So I want to talk about like the 102, 101, and that in a second. But also, like, have you noticed? I know you're not drafting in it, but have you noticed anything from just like being in tune with everything that's going on Underdog? Like drastic differences between whether it be like the type of player, ADPs, whatever, between the puppy and Best Ball Mania 2 to this point?
I haven't noticed that. I haven't looked at ADP differences, but I would be guessing it's the same because I think that the aggregated ADP is just off of all 12 team drafts. Total. So I think that ADP is going to be reflected on each side. So maybe at a lower price point, there's a couple more egregious picks in each draft. But I would guess it'd be pretty similar. I will say that in like the 3-man contest, and like there's a couple other things on Underdog that you guys can be doing, like that stuff is I think where the biggest edge is, like on the 3-man stuff. So if you haven't tried those, I think there's some edges to exploit, and that's where you get like really game theory based. But even Best Ball Mania 2 and like the puppy, like everything's so game theory based. I think that's why Best Ball is like only going to get more and more popular.
I think so too, and it's a very different stuff. So first of all, we have the 102, and I think we both agree that Dalvin is the pick here. And I guess we can talk about that for a second. To me, I went on ship chasing with Peter Overzet and Ben Gretsch and Pat Corrine last night, and we actually talked quite a bit in depth about this, where first round running back like seems fairly strong, and everybody's taking all of these guys. But to me, past those first two, CMC and Dalvin, it's like it gets hairy. I could poke really, really serious holes in every single other first round running back, to the point where I talked about I am probably taking Zeke third, but like even as we talked it through, and then I'm taking Travis Kelce fourth, just because I don't really like the advantage that Kelce can give me, and the just the holes I can poke in all those first round running backs. Like I almost started to talk myself into Kelce third overall last night. But like, what do you think about that first round kind of nuance?
So I think that the top of the draft, like Derrick Henry scares me just because it's like he doesn't catch that many passes. The Titans, like they're one injury away from that offense. Like they're so top heavy on the offense that if something happens to like an AJ Brown, that could like really tank the entire offense. Saquon Barkley's got a knee injury is coming back from, plus that offense is just egregious. So I'm with you. I have Zeke as my number 3. I think that CMC and Dalvin Cook are in a tier of their own. I think last year, people that drafted Dalvin Cook on Underdog, I think 52% of their teams advanced to the playoffs in Best Ball Mania 1. So I mean, the first round running backs, that is where you get the true league winning difference makers. That's why I always keep going back to, all right, even if I have like pick 8, I still want to try to find the guy that could be the next Dalvin Cook. Joe Mixon kind of has that appeal this year a little bit. I think that Nick Chubb also has that appeal in a run first attack. But that's the big thing, is I don't want to be drafting the top 15 running backs if they don't have this like elite ceiling. That's when I get into Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams.
Yeah, and I think that beyond those top 2, right? I think we could I agree on Zeke, and we could probably like really, if we wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of all those other guys, like nitpick how we rank them or whatever. But I think your point, like Mixon, I'm really high on Antonio Gibson.
Yes.
Like I'm not particularly high on Najee Harris, but like if you wanted to tell me a story about, he's going to get all the volume and catapult himself up, whatever. I think that those guys are all really, really close to Saquon, and even Kamara. I'm lower on Kamara this year, that kind of thing. That tier is a lot more jumbled, and to your point, Dalvin and CMC are up here. So I'm just like kind of spreading out amongst all those other guys to just, like you said, give myself shots on goal because I don't really know which one of those guys is going to be Dalvin, right? But I agree, they all have the highest probability chance of becoming Dalvin.
Yeah, definitely. I would throw Austin Eckler in there too, just if he gets used by like Alvin Kamara, and I think that offense is going to be really, really sick this year. So, like someone like Aaron Jones, like if you look at his on-off splits, like Aaron Jones, in half PPR was fine last year, but if you remove the games that Devontae Adams was out, then all of a sudden Aaron Jones was like a high-end RB2. So if we're drafting him like 13th, 14th overall, that's when I get nervous. Where like I don't know if Aaron Jones has like RB3 overall ceiling if Devontae Adams is getting all that volume. So. That would be someone I'm a little concerned with. Like Jonathan Taylor, he needs that third down role, and Nyheim Hines, like a legit third down running back. So he would be another one I would be a little concerned about. But all these guys are kind of like an injury away, and that's what makes it so tough. Like if you're just basing off median projections, it gets really tricky. But you have to kind of think, all right, if something happens to this player, then what happens? And that's kind of how you have to view things at the top.
Yeah, that's really true. And Aaron Jones screams to me, and I like Aaron Jones as a player, fine. And, if Aaron Rodgers plays, he's going to have a good season. But he just screams to me. So Pat Kerrane wrote an awesome article about kind of how we should actually be viewing the running back position. Essentially, it was really a top-down view of running backs, and Aaron Jones screams like this kind of player to me, where he quoted Zeke last year was the RB9, right? Pretty good.
Yep.
You got a first round running back. You got a top 10 running back in the league. And he was closing in on a 0% win rate.
Yeah.
If you took Zeke, he lost you your league basically.
100%,
because of what you gave up by taking him. That's what some of these guys feel like to me. And so, and that's what Aaron Jones is probably, and I kind of lean like Najee is pretty close to that for me too.
Yep.
But like, I just don't see, like you said, that ceiling. Like I can tell myself a very clear story where Antonio Gibson becomes CMC because like maybe I've just convinced myself because of the offense, whatever. But like that to me, that exists. Like Aaron Jones, like I don't see really any paths to that. I see paths to a good season, but that doesn't mean he's helping you in best ball.
Yeah, out of those like top 15 clear-cut like running backs, I have, I think, Najee Harris and Aaron Jones ranked 14th and 15th, and I have like the wide receivers, even like Justin Jefferson, I think in my rankings higher than those guys, DeAndre Hopkins, those types over them, and I'm lower than the market on Jonathan Taylor. I'm higher on Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler, those types. I think, and Antonio Gibson. I think those three and Joe Mixon, those four are the running backs that I want to be drafting at the turn, just because I think they have like that top 3, top 4 overall finish upside.
Yeah, I agree. So I was wondering if we would get a little bit of some of these wide receivers falling, which happens so much, and it fits into how I kind of feel like we should be drafting, especially when you get the 101 or 102. You're just set up perfect for that anchor running back. And then like I even like really push the limits sometimes of like taking it almost too far. Some people might take, and it might end up being too far, but like punting off the running back 2 position and just throwing darts at upside plays. Or if a guy falls to me, right? If Gus Edwards falls a round or 2 past ADP, I'll scoop him up. But in general, I'm just trying to like manufacture some upside at the RB2 position and then win at all these other positions. So that's why, to me, that is why the 101 and 102 are so much more valuable because you can do that. And so that's what I would take AJ Brown here, like every time. The only thing that I'll say super quick before we go off the clock is the only way to get a Dallas stack with one of those top 2 guys is to reach on CD and Amari here. I'm not going to do it, but I think that's like this thing that once I heard somebody say it to me, I can't get it out of my head. I'm like, none of my CMC or Dalvin teams are going to have Cowboys stacks. And I'm like, that's a problem if I'm right. Like I really am betting on the Cowboys, but the best running backs aren't going to have them. So what do you think about kind of that type of little extra nuance constructing teams for this tournament?
I think it's smart to do because if you just look at the top 3 rounds, like there's going to be teams that if I looked back at last year's data, it's going to be like the same 3 players are kind of linked up with each team across. So if you're trying to advance in the playoffs and you want a little bit of unique things, I think it's okay to reach on that wide receiver that you really like in the 3rd round. I would kind of rather play the ADP game in for most things, but I think in the 3rd round when you're picking out the turn, that's when I think it's okay to reach because you're going to get a unique lineup at least. Yeah,
I totally agree. And so I'm not doing that in this draft, and I'm going to take George Kittle because if I'm going to do a live draft, I have to get 49ers exposure. I think it's in my contract.
That playoff schedule is, insane.
And I get, you can probably speak better to this. Like I've seen a lot of like anti-George Kittle tweets, honestly, over the course, and I get it. Like, he hasn't really ever had the monster season in terms of, doing what Travis Kelce did last year. And honestly, I'm not sold that, he has that high of a probability of doing that this year. But like the path to him being a guy you need to win your league at the tight end position is very, very clear to me. It has a lot to do with what I feel about the 49ers. It has a lot to do with how good George Kittle is. And like you said, this like massive cherry on top. We're not even just talking about the playoff schedule, which is incredible. It's the whole season. They play the easiest schedule I have ever seen. So I just want to get I just want to get exposure to these guys, right? I'm not like predicting George Kittle to be, the tight end 1, but I don't want to leave. I don't want to go 150 teams and be stubborn on the 49ers.
My only take with the 49ers that I keep debating with myself is if Trey Lance is the guy, is Trey Lance going to pass enough to complete these guys' ADPs where they're being drafted with all three, Ayuk, Debo, and George Kittle. So I think this is a situation where we're talking about everyone loves to be stacking. I think that with rushing quarterbacks, you can just stack with like one guy and not have to draft all three of these guys. And earlier on, I like moved all the 49ers guys down, but then like it's really just game theory. Like if Debo Samuel misses time, then George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk are going to be awesome. So like that's kind of the thing I keep going back for. I think like a median projection, I don't think George Kittle would pay off. I don't think that Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk would pay off if everybody was healthy. But all it takes is one of those guys to get injured, and then all of a sudden a Trey Lance with an easy schedule plus a George Kittle, and then all of a sudden you are rocking and rolling. So that's kind of things when you're playing Best Ball Mania 2 in the puppy. It's so top heavy. It's so playoff driven. You need to think of like what happens if a player gets injured and how that affects everyone, and not draft off of median projections.
Yeah, it's just the difference between like drafting off the median projections and trying to like take advantage of ADPs is like drafting for value, right? Like, you know, I'm trying to scoop as many, you know, I think this guy's the 50th player overall and he's going 62nd, right? Like that's all well and good. And you could be right about that. And it doesn't matter because you should be drafting for like, how do I get paid off in this thing, right? I'm trying to get first out of 150,000 people. Like I understand that, frankly, I think Ayuk is going too early for that median projection. Kittle might be too. But like the payoff, if those guys do hit, they are the guy that you have to have. Like you said, if Debo goes there, and they can, it's not like they're going to bust, right? Like they're too good of football players. The offense is good and the schedule is so easy. Like they can keep you afloat, you know, but if something happens, or like, what if Ayuk is just that good?
Yes.
Right. Ayuk could be an alpha, you know, he could turn into the Stephon Diggs of last year, right? Maybe not the volume, but maybe even more efficiency than Diggs had. So like, there's just all these variables that sometimes people kind of miss the forest through the trees on these scenarios, right? Same thing with Dallas. It's like CD and Amari don't really project better than, you know, a lot of the guys in that range, but you're not going to catch me leaving them out of my portfolio at drafts, you know?
Would you be drafting Amari with CD? I know it's kind of hard because they go right next to each other and you have to be kind of picking in the back of the draft. Do you think like if I was trying to stack the Cowboys, which is clearly smart, I feel like I would only want to draft one of the top guys, Dak Prescott, and then Michael Gallup. And then like, I mean, we don't hope for injuries, but like the ultimate ceiling play would be you drafted CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper is out for the year, and all of a sudden now you have Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb at their peak with Dak Prescott. So would you be drafting both CD and Amari together, or would you rather like try to game plan for Gallup later?
I definitely barely, like, I think I might have gotten it once or twice where you get CD and Amari. Like Amari really has to fall, and he is getting, you know, he has gotten close to where he has to fall. But then on the other side, CD's going so much. CD keeps going up.
He's going
That's
early.
Why Amari, so it's really hard to get that pairing. I do try to do it just because, like, I have a lot of Dallas stacks. I have a lot of Dallas exposure, and so I want to just try to mix and match across all those teams. Right? You're even mixing in Jarwin. I even think, to your point about like kind of a scenario that wins it for you, like if Zeke goes down, I talked about this with Derrick Henry, including Pollard, because I don't think, you know, they'll just give Zeke 30 carries sometimes. I don't think that happens with Tony Pollard, so it changes the identity. Ben Gretsch calls it an identity back. That's what Derrick Henry is for the Titans. I think Zeke could be that for the Cowboys, to where it just now all these pass catchers get risen up, right? So it's like a correlated bet on that. And I think, to your point, the best way to do that is like CD Gallup Pollard, or, you know, CD Gallup Jarwin, or what, if you like Schultz better, whatever, that kind of stack. But I still try to do it. Like if CD and Amari are there, I'm still trying to get a couple of those.
Yeah, for you guys that missed it, Eric put out a great tweet about Darrington Evans and just how if Derrick Henry misses time, Darrington Evans is like very positively correlated with the pass catchers just because the identity changes. And I thought that was an excellent point.
Yeah,
and by the way, one other thing real quick. Blake Jarwin over Dalton Schultz. We talked to a Dallas Cowboys beat reporter, and he said that Blake Jarwin still is like the guy, and then Dalton Schultz is like a backup level player. And that if Blake Jarwin's healthy, and he seems to be healthy, that he's going to be the starter. So I think that if I was going to be betting on somebody whose ADP is going to climb in August, like I would bet on Blake Jarwin's ADP climbing.
I like that, especially because I just recorded something yesterday where I'm trying to push the limit a little bit on my tight ends. Like I say that, and I just drafted George Kittle, right? But like I am trying to like get exposure to very different combinations of only 2 tight ends, and like using those guys, right? Like you said, Blake Jarwin steps into this elite tier. Having him with George Kittle, it doesn't offset having Blake Jarwin, but if you get the smash Blake Jarwin season, like I would rather draft Justin Jefferson, I would rather have that 2v2. So I'm trying to do that. So Jarwin is a guy I like using in that scenario. So I want to pivot to another team because I wanted to ask you about this. I just took Cooper Kupp, and I want to just get like your overall Rams take, because they're like another team that's like priced probably pretty. Everybody is priced fairly, not too high, I don't think, not too low. But like I just keep coming back to, they're another one of these, like the Niners, like the Cowboys, whatever, that they could just set the world on fire with Stafford and some of these weapons now. Are you thinking about them in a similar bucket to like the Cowboys and Niners and those teams?
Oh yeah, Sean McVay is awesome, and I think people like, if you're like an analytics bro and you're only looking at Matthew Stafford stuff and like not putting any context into it, like I think that you're gonna pay for it this year. Like Kyle Shanahan was just trying to trade for Matthew Stafford, like that just came out too. Like when Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan are trying to trade for a quarterback, that probably means he's pretty good. So I feel like this is just like trust the football bros. They're gonna figure this one out. I think that Matthew Stafford's gonna smash, and I think that really like. The Rams don't have like a solidified like wide receiver 3. It's going to be more of a rotation. Like if Matthew Stafford pops off, it is a lot of that is just going to be Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. Maybe we get the Tyler Higbee post hype sleeper. And I mean, he's not even a sleeper anymore, but I think it's really going to be those 2 guys dominating. I think they're being very, very fairly priced. I think you're going to see the Rams ADOTs go higher. That's going to be the biggest thing is you're going to see deeper shots downfield, because that was just Jared Goff was not capable of doing that.
Yeah, that I started the draft season and I was like, oh man, the Rams are in like this. I kind of start like at a team level, like people do projections or rankings or whatever, and I kind of start just like go through team by team, and that's how I've got this like Niners obsession. Once you got to the Niners, you start looking at all the stars are aligning. I'm like, holy shit, I have to draft the 49ers. But the Rams were one of those teams for me too. It was just like, oh my gosh, this dude did all this with Jared Goff and worse weapons than this. Now he has infinity weapons, right? They like, and say whatever you want about like Tutu Atwell. They've perfectly crafted all these ancillary players too. Like even like Jacob Harris. Like I'm not saying Jacob Harris is going to do, but it's just the skills all fit so perfectly, and we know the guy can make things happen with far less talent than this. And so I just keep kind of going back to like I take Cooper Kupp kind of, it's not a top of a tier there, but there's after probably like Julio or something, there's a hodgepodge of like all these receivers who to me are like all really, really similar. And I'm ending up with more Cooper Kupp compared to Jamar Chase, Adam Thielen, whatever, those guys. I'm ending up with a lot of Kupp just because he tends to be the natural guy. You know, I don't really know why Robert Woods goes like 10 picks ahead of him. I think that's a little aggressive, but either way, a Kupp seems to fall in this little bucket and he's like the perfect way to get Rams exposure.
Both of those, I mean, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp have had like top 10 wide receiver seasons, and I feel like everyone views them as like high floor, which is true. They are high floor, but like that doesn't mean that they don't have a high ceiling. One of my favorite stats looking back, because I'm with you, I look at it team by team. That's how I like to start my off season. Is Matthew Stafford's been like bottom 5 in play action rate like every single season he's been with the Rams or with the Lions, and Jared Goff's been like literally top 3 every single year. So we haven't seen Matthew Stafford use play action, and that's probably what he's best at. Is he's so smart and he has such a rocket arm. Like Stafford's gonna go crazy using play action. He's never been afforded the opportunity to use that, and we all know that all the play action stuff is awesome. You're going to see a higher downfield shots to Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. I think that they're ceiling, like they're not just like floor plays in the 4th round. Like I think they like legitimately have top 5, top 8 overall wide receiver ceilings too.
Yeah, I mean Cooper Kupp just did it like what two years ago.
People forget like that just happened with Jared Goff. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and he was good last year. but he only scored 5 touchdowns because Goff was horrible and they ran the ball in the red zone, right? It was like we just use it is always so funny, and I like to like trigger the people sometimes, like tweeting about that kind of stuff. It's like, and people get so mad because I'm like, I'm not hating on Darren Waller, but it's like, okay, Darren Waller did all this last year, and it's like, boop, yep, got to take him in the second round, right? Yeah. Cooper Kupp did it 2 years ago. And now the only thing that changed last year was his quarterback somehow got worse, even though he was already really bad. Yeah, and he didn't score the red zone touchdowns, right? Like they had to do so much to mask that quarterback that he didn't get that. Now he has the best quarterback he's ever played, one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and we're just like, why? Like we don't care about that part, you know? It's just so funny. It's such a funny market to me. All of the ADPs, and they change so fast with like any sort of little fluff or whatever you get is going to just skyrocket, guys.
I mean, any Roto World blurb, and all of a sudden you see like that, you refresh like a week later and like, oh, that guy moved up 10 spots. Like Cole Beasley after his Vax comments, he's dropped like 40 spots in ADP. Like that's ridiculous.
That's becoming a problem because I was on Cole Beasley at his old ADP. Like I've been drafting Cole Beasley all summer already, and now, yeah, like you said, now I can get him in like the 13th or 14th round, and it's like
I think he's dropped like more than any wide receiver of the last like 21 days. That's so funny.
It's hilarious, but that's like Cole Beasley's not sitting out the season.
Yes, come on,
like he's not ridiculous. Sitting out the season. This isn't like even I don't think Aaron Rodgers is sitting out either. But even the Aaron Rodgers thing is like, yeah, if he wanted to walk away, like I could see, there's a percentage chance that a real percentage chance that it happens. Like Cole Beasley's not walking away from football because
they're a Super Bowl contender. Like he's not dropping out right now. That's ridiculous. He had a good year too last year.
He had an awesome year last year, and I think that was what part of why I was on him is he happened to be one of the guys. We usually go too far when a guy has a good season, right? He was the guy who smashed. He was like a top 25 wide receiver. And he's going at like wide receiver 50 or whatever.
Yep, he was being drafted like 15 or 16 wide receiver spots lower than his per game finish at wide receiver last year. Like his made no sense. I think it's like the better in best ball thing, which like guilty, and I do think that actually is true. But when the Bills pass the ball 50 times a game, like Cole Beasley in the slot definitely has a ceiling. So
yeah, he also scored more touchdowns than you would think. It wasn't just Julian Edelman type stuff. Yeah. So this I'm really enjoying this draft. I'm going to take Claypool and just keep piling on my wide receivers here. But like this is a very different blend of players. Even though we didn't do like the Cowboys thing to kind of get real crazy at the 2-3 turn, this is a very different blend of wide receivers than I'm used to. But like you see, this is like, I don't know how you feel about this. I don't really have like guys, like my guys in any of these real tiers. I guess I'm going to say that, and Debo is kind of one of my guys. So I am going to take Debo, but like Claypool, like I mean, he's a certified grown ass man. Like I really, really like Chase Claypool. Jamar Chase might be. I'm not sure if we'll see. Like he seems pretty good, but we'll see. But like Cooper Kupp, I like him, but I've taken other guys in that range too. I'm just kind of taking whoever falls in these at like these tier breaks. You know what I mean? And like I feel like, maybe you think differently, but I feel like most people are like targeting specific players in all of those tiers, as opposed to letting somebody fall to them that, like I said, like Chase Claypool, like I like him as a football player, but he's not like my favorite best ball pick. But when he falls in that tier, I'm just going to scoop him.
So I think one of the biggest things right now is like, I think it's totally fine to have your guys and like totally, if you want to watch film, do analytics, whatever you want, have your own guys, sure. But you have to realize that you don't have to draft them ahead of ADP. Like the basic probability is there's a decent chance that guy's going to be falling to you in like 30% of the drafts, like right where you can draft them at ADP. So like you don't have to, like if you love Chase Claypool, it doesn't mean you have to reach on him in the 5th round. Just do more drafts, and then the 40% of the drafts where Chase Claypool is right there at the top of your queue, that's when you draft them. Like you don't have to reach on your guys every single time. So
that is a really excellent point that gets missed in content, right? If you put a picks article out, like, and I try to stay away from it as much as I can, but you still have to be like I put out like who I'm trying to take a stand on, right? And I'm sure we'll get to some of those guys, and you've talked about, I'm going to lead into it because Josh talked about some of these offenses to load up on, and one of them, a guy that you mentioned, is on the Chargers, big Mike Williams, and we're on the same page. We're on the same page with Mike Williams, and so like you have that guy. I haven't gotten as much Mike Williams as I want because he started to rise, and it just happened to fall into this pocket of the draft where it wasn't working out for me. But like you can always adjust. Like you can always you can do more drafts, right? Assuming you're fitting within your bankroll or whatever bankroll. You can do more drafts and like, okay, look, I've done 20 drafts now and I never got Mike Williams and I want to have Mike Williams. Okay, take him, but you don't need to do it every single time because you're always going to have the worst end of all the Mike Williams teams. Like doing it a little bit is okay, but like taking it too far is like you're just creating an entire portfolio of minus EV teams.
Yeah, 100%. If you look on your team and your pick is a lot lower than where the ADP is on every single one of your picks, like good luck. Like that's just not how it works. So when I'm doing my rankings, like I would be happy to put like Mike Williams, like wide receiver 33. Like I think that's like totally reasonable, but I'm not going to put him as my wide receiver 33 in my actual rankings because they need to be close to ADP. Like I don't want people downloading my rankings and then one player is like 44 spots above ADP. Like that means if you're drafting up my rankings, you are getting zero value. So I think that all rankings need to be very close to ADP. I'm totally fine with having my dudes. Chase Claypool is like my dude, but he's going to be like 2 spots ahead of ADP. So like you're not drafting him in the 4th round. Like you're drafting him in the 6th round where he belongs. I just like to have him better, or I have him higher ranked than Deontay. They're right next to each other. I prefer Claypool. I'm not going to draft him in the 4th round.
That's also a good point. Just between thinking about those 2 players specifically, and like correct me if you don't think this, like just the archetype of player that Claypool is, he has paths to like breaking fantasy, right? Yes. We know he's good. He's the downfield. He's this freak of a downfield threat, right? Like people sometimes take it too far, right? I try to live in the middle. I definitely have player takes. I definitely have my guys and all that kind of stuff. But I try to live in the middle and not take it too far. But you also have to understand like the archetype of a player. There are things that guys like Chase Claypool and guys like AJ Brown can do that Deontay Johnson just flat out cannot physically do. So that creates a different level of like range of outcomes for those types of players. And so to your point, like I'm just going to side with Chase Claypool. One is 6'4", 230 and runs a 4.3, and one is 180 pounds and ran a 4.6. It's like, who am I gonna side?
I mean, this is like rudimentary like analysis, but one went to Toledo as like a 2-star, and one went to Notre Dame and killed the combine, and like everyone loved Chase Claypool. My only Steelers take, and this is just kind of like a team building take, is they could not run the ball at all last year. I'm not convinced that Najee Harris is going to like unlock the rushing game, but I can promise you the Steelers think that's going to be the case. So I think that you're going to see the Steelers pass the ball downfield more, because I think a lot of the plays, if you watch those games, a lot of screens, a lot of quick hitting out routes and stuff, which was basically how NFL coaches view their run game when they can't run the ball, is like these Deontay Johnson Juju stuff. I think with Najee Harris there, it's going to be more Chase Claypool plays, like traditional intermediate passes. And I think that's where you're going to see Chase Claypool and Deontay kind of flip-flop, just because Najee Harris is the actual run game. Like Deontay Johnson was the run game last year. Yeah. Now they actually have Najee Harris. Yeah,
it was Deontay and Juju, right? Yep. They're just throwing 3-yard passes. I like that take. That's a really interesting take. And the Steelers thing is one. See, we just talked about fluff, right? And you get the Mecole blurb, and now he's going, back end of the 8th round. And we're gonna get into last year. We're gonna do this all over again. We're gonna do the Mecole thing all over again. I gotta say, this is one of my guys, and I loved hearing your take because so I wrote him up as a guy, Michael Pittman, as a guy that I wanted to take a stand on this year. And I honestly, like, I do a lot more like feel based and like watch the tape and look at what like the draft rooms are doing type analysis, as opposed to like super analytical. But I still try to include some stuff, right? Like I use some basic metrics to kind of back up my takes, and I steal them from people like you. But there wasn't a lot like to be like, oh yeah, he was really promising, right? Like I could even like, I'm big on Mo Alley Cox. Like there was a lot of data, albeit small sample, to back up why Mo Alley Cox might be able to ascend. There wasn't a lot. It was much more. I watched him and I was like, holy cow, this dude's a baller. And now, second year breakout, not much target competition, blah, blah, blah. So like, is that kind of how you felt about Michael Pittman too? It was just kind of a rare case where you watched him and you were like, okay, this guy is a baller.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things. He was a high pedigree player. I mean, when USC 4-star, plenty of production at USC, was a 34th overall pick, I believe, last year. And then you turn on the tape, and then he's 6'4" and is running by everybody. And I mean, that's the perfect breakout candidate. So I always think that, like, when in doubt, give me the guys that went to major colleges that tested like quality athletes. Like I know there's some exceptions to the rule with small school guys and with like less athletic players, but most of the players that are being drafted in like the top 3-4 rounds were like went to Alabama. They were 80th percentile athletes. Like it's when in doubt, give me Michael Pittmans and Chase Claypools that were like certified ballers their entire life. And like, it's not hard to like see them having a huge breakout. So Michael Pittman was definitely that guy, like run and catch, had it a lot. And I think that he profiles as like a legit number one receiver, especially because TY is getting older.
Yeah. It's another one of those where, yeah, if you really want some in-depth analytics to back it up, it might not be there, but the stars are kind of aligning for this guy to like emerge into this role that the team kind of needs. You can't, like, they're a good offense. They were a good offense last year, and they should be a fair enough offense this year, pending Carson Wentz not being totally incompetent. But like you said, TY, I think you said it yesterday, TY is a role player, right? Yep. I think Paris Campbell's probably a role player. He might be a good role player, but he's still a role player. Zach Pascal is a role player, right? I can talk up Mo Alley Cox all I want, but he's a role player. Yep. They have a bunch of good role players, which is like, who's the one guy who could be the not role player? It's Pittman. So like, just give me bets on those kind of guys.
Yep, totally there with you. And then like, if you want the other film take, is like Carson Wentz does not throw any shallow passes at all. Like he never does. That's why he takes so many sacks. That's why he was so frustrating last year. Is he was waiting for all his wide receivers to get open, and none of them could separate. So I think that Michael Pittman as like the intermediate guy on the offense, I think that he matches up with Carson Wentz really well. And then maybe Paris Campbell doesn't. Like Wentz doesn't throw to his running backs, and he doesn't throw like any drag routes. It's all intermediate, deep stuff. I think that's like another feather in Michael Pittman's cap.
And that was literally all Paris Campbell ran at Ohio State. I don't think he ran another route at Ohio State. Yeah. And I mean, he just smashed because he was a freak and the offense was good. But I always found that really funny. I'm like, well, if Paris Campbell can just go somewhere, they'll let him run 50 drags a game. He would have
dominated with Phillip Rivers last year, because Phillip Rivers loves that. So that's what's so unfortunate about Paris Campbell is he would have dominated last year, and then this year I'm not very high on them.
Yeah. That was some brutal run bad. Like he could have like made a lot of money last year. For like his career, and now he might like be a super cheap second contract kind of guy. So I wanted to bring up kind of getting into like it was funny that you said like, oh, I want to draft you from Alabama, and I took Jalen Waddle, but like this, like I haven't taken a quarterback yet, and that's another thing. Like I'm just kind of starting to like build this portfolio on this team in the structural way that I think is best. Like I like to take Kyler. I thought about taking Justin Herbert over, I don't remember who it was, if it was Debo. I think it was Debo. The issue is you've pumped up Big Mike Williams so far now that you can never get the Herbert Mike Williams stack anymore. The ADPs don't align. And so like, I'm just like, you're thinking all these things through, right? And like, I have tight end hammered. I have the RB1 with Dalvin, so I don't have to sweat it. And like, soon the C's are going to part at running back. Like it's almost already starting to get there where the values just start to flip, right? All the best values were wide receivers, and now all the best values are about to be running backs. And like, I don't know if you have a Jalen Waddle take or a Dolphins take. I don't even like know that I love anything about it, but like, I think people should kind of do what we did here and just be like setting up a bunch of different stacks, right? Do we want to take Tannehill because he falls to us? Got AJ Brown. Do we want to take Stafford, right? Burrow, whatever, all these different possible stacks, and obviously the Lance the Lance stack is set up. But I'm also not forcing Lance. We're closing in on 40+% of Trey Lance for me in the portfolio, so I'm trying not to force him. But I
real quick, I need to ask you, do you have any, and this is like probably my worst take of the entire offseason, do you have any Jimmy G 49ers stacks in these big tournaments? I mean, he's literally free. We've seen him have a top 10 fantasy season. The weapons they've never been better. And like in DFS, we talk about like low ownership, correlation, all this stuff. Like that is like literally what Jimmy G is. It's so disgusting because everyone doesn't like Jimmy G. But
we might end up with Jimmy G on this team because we just got Trey Lance sniped from us right before. Okay. So
as our QB3, that's all I'm saying is somebody needs to do the Jimmy G in the last round if you need a quarterback 3.
I will admit that I'm gonna take Gus here because this is kind of where I'm really. We'll get back to the Jimmy G and like the quarterback thing, but like. This is just where I start to just kind of like pick off values really, or, I know I'm going to have to get stacks and you're just kind of flexible and it also naturally diversifies. Like, again, I don't really have a strong take Gus Edwards versus AJ Dillon versus, I typically like some of the little bit more home run type guys like Pollard, did Henderson just go?
Yeah, he was the pick. He
was. I was trying to set it up perfectly to be able to take Henderson right there. But those are the kind of guys that I really like to take. Oh, man, this is kind of hairy.
I think Kenyon Drake's all right. Like, he has bell count potential if something happened to Jacobs. I think that he has some type of role. So it's not great, but I think that he has at least some role with actually a ceiling, too.
I don't know if I've drafted Kenyon Drake, so this is good. I need to get more diversified teams, especially like smashing it was easy in Best Ball Mania 2. Like for the first while, because like I'm drafting over a course of 75. I have 75 teams right now over the course of 2 months. It's like you just get natural diversification, right? There's hype pieces that come out. Evan Silva talks about Tyler Higbee, or you talk about Big Mike Williams, and they go 2 rounds. They go 2 rounds earlier, so it just naturally happens. In the puppy right now, it's like it's going to fill in 2 weeks. The ADPs can't possibly move that far in 2 weeks. So like all my teams look the same. So I am trying to do like that, right? Like in this range. I don't know. What's the difference between Kenyon Drake and AJ Dillon? Really nothing. So like diversify it a little bit.
Yeah, totally there with you. Do you change like are you trying to draft a different type of team? Like, naturally, like it happens because ADPs move. But like, are you drafting 2 different types of teams in like June versus August? Like, is it just like we know more about like the RB2, who the RB2 is, so then that type of position gets elevated higher, and then you're drafting less quarterbacks? Like, is that anything that you've been picking up on?
Kind of. So something, real galaxy brain way of that I've been thinking about pretty much what you just said is, so this team in general, right, is kind of how I structured the majority of my drafts, like anchor running back. I'm pretty much like an anchor running back or 0 RB on most teams just because of how it all comes from like how you treat the first couple rounds. Right? Like if I'm taking Kelsey earlier than everybody else, that naturally sets me up for more 0 RB teams and more anchor RB teams because I'm taking whatever best player available in the second round, and running back starts to get thin. So anyway, at this point, my real galaxy brain take right now is that we should be taking more teams like this before training camp starts with these dart throw guys at running back 2 and punting it way further down. Just because there's going to be natural attrition in training camp. I have no idea who it's going to be, but players are going to get hurt in training camp and preseason, right? You said it. Josh Jacobs goes down. Kenyon Drake is not going in the 11th round anymore. Exactly. You know what I mean? But I don't know who those guys are. But like in my opinion, it's basically a certainty that one of them is going to go down, or multiple are going to go down, or we were wrong about them, right? Like we get into camp and it's like, oh yeah, Kenyon Drake's the starter. What are you talking about? Like that's not likely. But I'm just trying to bet on a lot of these later round running backs because I think there's just a lot of paths at this point in the offseason to them becoming a lot more relevant than we expect them to be right now.
Yeah, there's a much higher chance that a running back vaults 7 rounds than like a wide receiver in like the last couple of rounds, just because like you're one ankle roll away from a massive role change, and it's kind of harder for the wide receivers to like see that big of a jump. So yeah, I think that this roster construction is perfect. I'm Sometimes I'll do two running backs, but I'm not drafting my third running back until like round 13. It's the same thing. Like it's the difference of one starting roster between bimodal RB or anchor RB. But it's like the worst thing you can do is draft 4 running backs by round 8. Like that's like you cannot do that. That's the only thing that you can't do. If you draft 1 or 2, I don't think it matters that much. The data shows that doesn't really matter that much. But you just can't involve too much, and you want more dart throws. So I think that like the 0 RB was right with like the guys they're trying to target. Like you need like maybe one guy that catches some pass and then one like absolute high ceiling guy. And I just wanted to actually draft the 2 starting running backs, but not draft that middle tier still.
Yeah. And so that I totally agree. I have plenty of like and I wrote about this the other day, that how we're drafting right here is like how if I got to choose every draft how I was going to do it, which I guess like you kind of do, but you know what I mean? It doesn't always work out that way, right? Like Antonio Gibson falls to the beginning of the 3rd, like I'm freaking taking him, you know? I'm not worried about my structure at that point. I can figure it out. But like exactly what you just said, nailed it. And I think people don't think about it that way. Like, especially like you said, bimodal RB. I get both of those guys. Now, not only does that dictate like my structure and what I'm doing at that position, it should dictate the archetype of player that I'm picking, right? The types of running backs I need to fit together in a 0 RB build are different, because there are things I need in a 0 RB team out of running backs that I don't need when I took running back in the first 2 rounds. I don't need those. You know, James White, like it's a wasted draft pick for me when I took Joe Mixon and Zeke, right? Because if James White is playing for them, I'm screwed. We're the team is probably failing.
Yep. Like Gus Edwards is another perfect example. In this build, Gus Edwards makes sense. I usually am not drafting Gus Edwards because I usually will go like Mixon Eckler at the turn. And then I don't like Gus Edwards being in my starting lineup. Like that means shit went wrong. Like I cannot have that. So that's where I would have drafted Kenyon Drake, where, Josh Jacobs now, all of a sudden now there's a chance that Kenyon Drake's actually like outproducing those guys. So the 0 RB archetype needs to be applied based off of what you've done in the first 3 or 4 rounds.
100%. So here's a question for you here. We don't have any quarterbacks. Would you take Tua here as kind of, kind of scooping up value? I think that's what I would do. If we didn't, this is where it would have been more interesting. Like if we had Lance, I think what you do with your second quarterback, if like you take Lance as your first, like Lance or Fields as your first, like I love both of those players in drafts, but then how you attack the quarterback position is very, I think up for debate. But I think Tua, I think you have to take Tua.
And you already had Waddle.
And we have Waddle. So I just started working on something I wanted to kind of throw by you. I think maybe even you and Josh, I'm going to get in so much trouble, by the way, for taking Manny Sanders. I got so much shit last night on shit.
Manny Sanders the guy. Manny Sanders the guy.
I got so much crap for getting us to take Manny Sanders because they're ageist. Okay. So many people.
So is the market. So is the market. The entire market is ageist. All right, everyone out here in the chat, wherever you guys are listening to this, go watch Gabriel Davis. Tell me what you think. Like, just go watch him. Go watch him spend. There's like 45 targets or whatever it is. Go watch his targets, and then tell me who's better, Emmanuel Sanders or Gabe Davis. Like,
and that is painful. That is painful for me, as like I come mostly from DFS, right? Like this, I've always grinded best ball, but this is the first year. Like I'm like full pedal to the metal, and so like the Bills. When you're playing DFS, especially on PPR sites, like the Bills were a gold mine. And John Brown was hurt so much, it was like Gabriel Davis was just always a discussion point in DFS. And like I liked him in like college football DFS. It was just like all the stars aligned.
Baller there.
Like, I wanted Gabe Davis to be a thing. And like after rostering him a million times on DraftKings, it's like I'm not so sure that this guy is good, no matter how hard I wish for him to be good.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a chance. Like we were having this debate when we were talking about like we were grinding the sophomores this year, and we we're watching all the film, and like someone like Jalen Reagor was, I mean, truly awful. Like one of the worst starting wide receivers in the entire league last year, and then Jalen Reagor can all of a sudden be good. Like, and that's just like where you can't put too much weight into it. But I think that Gabe Davis is being pretty aggressively drafted right now, especially when you see the beat reports that Manny Sanders probably has the starting job. And then I watched the tape and I was like, I'm not sure if Gabe Davis is ready yet.
And this is right that we always have to try to take the off-season reports with a grain of salt. But like when they literally, it's like the Denzel Mims thing. It's like when when they literally come out and say, no, Manny, like, what do you like? You're talking about Gabe. What are you talking about? Yeah, Manny's the number 2. He's playing on the outside. Like, it's not even a question, and that's what they're talking about. Yeah, Mims is running with the 2s. Like, they love Keelan Cole. It's like, okay, those are times like them just saying, Zeke's in the best shape of his life is like whatever. But when they're literally telling us, no, Manny is the starter. Like, you can say whatever you want about that, but there's value just being on the Bills and being on the field.
Yes, and if you look at over the cap, I always go to over the cap. Look at the contracts. The Bills gave Emmanuel Sanders $6 million. Like, that's not nothing money. Yep. And the Jets gave Keelan Cole $5.5 million. So, like, it wasn't just like some random beat report. Like, they're following the money. They're talking to the coaches. They're seeing the OTAs. They also have a good sense of, like, if Denzel Mims or Gabe Davis can actually play. So I think you have to factor in everything. But I always like going to see what the contract is looking like when players change teams, because I think that when the Bills gave Emmanuel Sanders $6 million, I felt like that means he's going to be on the field with a decent amount.
Yep, I totally agree. I've had to use the follow the money example for far fewer dollars than that. Like, I have to keep telling people Samaje Perine is the backup in Cincinnati, yes. And I'm talking about like $750,000 guarantee or whatever. But like it's the same idea. You don't just give Manny Sanders that amount of money if you don't plan on. I mean, he could suck. We're talking about something different, and I get if that's your take. Like, he's old, he might be washed, and Gabe then they start playing Gabe. But like, the take is not, he's not going to be on the field because Gabe is gonna play over him. So I think it's just sometimes people miss that kind of thing too. So I did want to bring up this question because I think it's a good question, and because you've talked about like 3-mans, we talked a little bit about rookies and sophomores and some different formats. So I will say, like, my overarching belief in the difference between 12-man leagues and the difference between these tournaments is actually huge, and that's one of the biggest edges that exist. Because, like, yes, there's this comment that always comes out across Twitter. It's like, well, you just have to win. You just got to survive in advance type of thing. Yeah. And that is partially true, but, you still have to win all the – there's a strategy to surviving and advancing, right, that is different than just winning that 12-man league. And you need to provide yourself with, like, basically scenarios that play out that give you, a better team than your opponents and paths to upside you need paths to upside, not only for the whole season, not only for like a championship week, for basically 4 different tournaments, right? A 12-man tournament for 14 weeks, and then 3 different tournaments in those other weeks. And so there's nuance to building teams that are structured for that. That should be like in 12-man leagues. Like, I would have a structure that I would be drafting, but I would be mostly just like scooping up the best plays.
Yeah, that's when like the win rates and like, this type of person has had like a 10% win rate. Like, that's where like really matters for like just your regular 12 teams. I think that there's a little more nuance that needs to be applied in. Like when you're talking about like the week 14 to get to week 15, like that's a very top heavy structure too. It's not just like they're allowing everybody to go to the next week. Like, no, you like really need to be treating that like a DFS lineup. So there's been a lot of things I was looking at. I was looking at just like which type of players were advancing last year. And this is the tricky part about using one year sample, but half of the teams had Derrick Henry on the finals, and like 40% of the teams had Tannehill, and like 30% of them had like Adam Humphries because he just happened to play on the Titans. So when you get to the finals, the team looks exactly the same. Like all 50 teams last year, that's how many teams made it to the finals. They all had the same exact team because those players went off in the 2 weeks prior. So I think that was another thing I was looking at, is not caring about actual week 6 or week 17 this year, the actual finals. I'm caring about the 2 weeks beforehand, because the teams that are in the finals, it's going to be whoever went off the week prior. Like, you don't get to the finals unless your team went off in week 16. So I think the teams that are making to the finals would be highly correlated. So I would be focusing on the 2 weeks prior, because you have to actually advance through it. So
really, really good point. I really like that. I really like that point. Okay, so here's one thing that we have to talk about. Quarterback didn't break our way in this draft, right? Okay. Quarterback has not broken our way. We have Tua, and we have Tua stacked up with Waddle. That's all good. We're at a spot where like we're very clearly kind of loaded up on wide receivers. I like to take 5 running backs with this structure because it gives you Dalvin and then it gives you 4 shots right at the RB2. And something I think people need to. Now, this is not going to be me standing for Daniel Jones or the Giants. I hate the Giants. I don't even really ever want to take these guys. But you have to kind of be flexible. This is something to the 12-man point I would not be doing in a 12-man. Like, I mean, I might take Daniel Jones if he's the best quarterback available, but I would not be like setting up this backdoor stack is what I would call it, right? I still want the correlation with Daniel Jones, if at all possible, that I can get it. And so having these late round guys and having the little correlations figured out, literally earlier today, I had to take Sam Darnold and Dan Arnold.
There you go.
But right. And I thought about this in this one, but I didn't really want to have 2 Sam Arnold, Dan Arnold stacks in one day. That's enough. But right, like you still want to have that correlation in this tournament that we're building in. And it's like, okay, look, Daniel Jones is whatever. He's a runner. He's the best quarterback available. He's the only, like, I kind of like Sam Darnold, but Daniel Jones has more ceiling with his legs than Sam Darnold does. And I still want to have that correlated event, right? Like like you mentioned, in week 15 or 16 or whatever, if the Giants happen to be that stack that I need, like I have that now, as opposed to somebody else that has it, even though I have Daniel Jones. I just want that added correlation. And so having these kind of backdoor stacks, I think, is important.
Yep. The last 4 or 5 rounds, I think like you should be like aiming for correlation. And like that's like one way to do it. And guys are going to be on the field a lot. And I think that Sterling Shepard's probably going to be on the field a decent amount here. Yeah,
I think they posted something about I don't remember who shared it on Twitter, but there was a report basically that was, the starters are basically not Kadarius Toney is what they're saying. That he's kind of like the Jack, going to be like the jack of all, or that's the plan at least for him, is to be the jack of all trades. And Shepard will be in the slot. I've taken a little bit of Shepard. Like I'm just spreading out amongst these guys. Like that wide receiver gets so gross that, who am I to say whether it's going to be Sterling Shepard or Tyrell Williams or Sammy Watkins,
Yeah, I think Sterling Shepard, because he has inside-outside versatility, I think that he has a better chance of staying on the field than Darius Slayton, by like a long shot. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Darius Slayton is 4th in snaps and routes and targets and all that stuff among those guys. And that Sterling Shepard, if Kadarius Toney's balling out, Sterling Shepard could be the second outside receiver. If Kadarius Toney's goofing around and Darius Slayton's starting, then he's going to be the slot guy. And then like he has easy paths to be on the field at least.
Yeah, that is really true. Kadarius Toney is interesting because I've heard you and Josh talk about him, and I kind of got distracted. I think we were on the clock, but he is a guy. I have this like idea that I'm like workshopping, and it is like a stack elevator, right? Okay. And so I think that's also what Jalen Waddle is for Miami, and the thesis basically is right. Either the quarterback is a smash. Right, if Tua balls out, if Tua like takes a huge leap and he's awesome, and a player the caliber of Jalen Waddle and the archetype of Jalen Waddle, like his ceiling shoots through the roof. Right, great explosive player with a great quarterback. That's awesome. Kadarius Toney, say whatever we want about Kadarius Toney as a first round draft pick. He's the Giants version, in my opinion, of that. Right, we know what we got with Galladay, Ingram, whatever. Shepard is not going to be that flashy guy, but if Daniel Jones happens to take a step forward, or on the opposite end, if Jalen Waddle is just awesome, he elevates that team so much because of what he can bring if he outperforms what our expectation is of him. So I'm trying to include those guys if I can in stacks, because like the ceiling, like the 1% outcome is so correlated between those kind of players.
Definitely. And that's the whole thing with Kadarius Toney. Like median projection, if you're trying to project routes on week 1, like you're not drafting Kadarius Toney. But if Kadarius Toney is as good as what the Giants think he is, then there's a chance that he's an absolute baller, and then he elevates the entire offense because he's so explosive. And that's just like, I didn't love Kadarius Toney as a prospect. I had him like a 2nd or 3rd round type of guy. But he's an athlete and he's high pedigree, and they drafted him high. So they want him to be really good. So he has really high potential. I just think that the floor is just non-existent. Like this dude missed like all of the practices, the OTAs. He missed his first practice because he didn't have the right shoe size. Like he could not practice because he didn't have the right shoe size. And then he didn't show up to the next couple practices because he was arguing about the rookie contract. And every single rookie plays in OTAs when they haven't signed a contract. So like the guy is like he's all over the place. But
Yeah.
like some guys, like Antonio Brown was like really, really good. Obviously, I'm not saying Kadarius Toney is Antonio Brown, but like there's like a chance that he's just a knucklehead in the offseason, and then like week 4 comes around and he's just an absolute alpha. So
yeah,
who knows? We'll
I mean,
see.
you heard it here first. Kadarius Toney is Antonio Brown. That's what I got from that
Headline
from that spiel. That's
Roto World blurb that.
Yeah, exactly. Underdogs, Hayden Winks, comps Kadarius Toney to Antonio Brown. But so I also have all these like galaxy brain thoughts about these like guys like that, right? Like I'm not sure he fits the archetype of like a real like true difference maker in the NFL, but I also think football is really changing. I wouldn't have said that, like we wouldn't have said that about a lot of guys. Even like just a couple of years ago, like football has changed so much. And like you see, I always think about like at the goal line, and you'll see teams run like jet motion. And you get, when you get, I'm trying to think of who even does it in that. Well, the Florida did it with Kadarius Toney.
Literally, that's what he did. That's exactly what he did.
That's how he scores, right? They're in man. The defense is in man. Even if they're in zone, he's so damn fast that he just gets you off balance. And so, what round are we in? Is it time?
Yeah.
Oh no! Did somebody take Darrington Evans?
Yep, a couple picks.
16 points.
I think Chuba's all right though.
Chuba's fine. Yeah. Chuba. I guess we'll get through these couple of picks, and I want to pick your brain on some of the late round running backs because, like as we see in this structure, I'm getting a lot of these running backs, and I actually think it's a big edge. Not only because of what I talked about, like with the offseason nonsense, I just think it's kind of a big structural edge when you get either that anchor or the 2 RB start to just like use these, like take these darts. Like the market is giving us all these dart throws for free. So I'm trying to take as many of them as I can. Like, do you have any, preference on any of these guys? Or are you just kind of mixing and matching, or what's your take on this tier?
Well, I think big picture, if you just look at how many running backs versus wide receivers have been drafted this year compared to last year, through 15 rounds, there was 59 running backs being drafted. This year, it's only 51. And the exact opposite is true for wide receivers, basically meaning wide receivers are being pushed up into late rounds, and all these running backs are actually good picks. And we were not seeing that last year. So
I froze. So whoever this is, who do we pick? No, James White. That's James.
Okay. So for me, it really depends on the roster construction. We just talked about that. But I'm factoring in like half PPR versus full PPR. So like I'm not that stoked on Giovanni Bernard, for example, just because like I don't see like what his like true ceiling is. Yeah. So that's why I'm always like Darrington Evans, Chuba Hubbard, those types. Perfect example last year, Tony Pollard didn't start. Was his win rate was probably really low last year, but he started in week 15, and Tony Pollard was like the 5th highest owned person in Best Ball Mania 1 finals last year because he had a huge week when you needed him to on that 1 week. So like in week 16, if you didn't have Tony Pollard last year, oops, you probably weren't advancing. So like I'm okay with like the lower win rate guys when you're talking about these best ball tournaments when you need like one massive week. And I just Gio's going to have a lot of 7-point weeks. I'm not sure how many 19-point weeks he's going to have. So I'm usually chasing for pure upside. And I think you're making a good point about doing that early. Especially when the guys like we kind of trust. Like I think like Chuba Hubbard's like actually gonna be the number 2. But that's just like what grinding the news is, grinding the draft prospects. I think that you can kind of have a better picture of like who's actually the number 2 and number 3.
I also I have the same concerns that I've kind of heard some other people like Chuba in the past game, right? He wasn't really asked to do a lot of that at Oklahoma State. But like also if you watch him, I don't think it's for lack of skill. I think it was just that's how Oklahoma State ran their offense. And like I think about Chuba, putting on my watching college football grinding tape thing. If he had come out the year before, if he had come out a year early, I think like if you're playing dynasty leagues or whatever, like I think he would have been a really hot commodity. Yep. And now he went back to school, and it did not go well for him going back to school. So and he lands in. I mean, look what happened, Mike Davis. Look what happened. Like it's an absolute smash. And so I'm not like flag planting any of these guys besides Darrington Evans, really. But I also think some of them have roles. Like Chuba probably doesn't have a role, but Chuba has the ceiling. Some of them even have more of a role than people will give him credit for. Like, assuming Darrington Evans gets, is the number 2 or whatever. Derrick Henry does not play pass downs.
Yeah.
Darrington Evans was playing when he was healthy last year. He was playing on field. He scored a touch. He had like one like actually usable fantasy week last year, and he only played like 3 games. Yeah. Like that's a role. Like, you can actually, like, you don't have to draft Giovanni Bernard when you get Evans and some of these other guys, because they don't have that different of a role. Actually, it's just we don't view it that way, and there's a little bit of uncertainty.
Totally agree. Going back to Chuba Hubbard and Oklahoma State, that is just a product of Oklahoma State. If you look at their ADOT relative to all of college football, it's always downfield. Look at all the play, like Mason Rudolph, like James Walker, like all these guys are only downfield threats. Tylan Wallace, the same thing. It's like all these guys were downfield threats. That's just a product of the offense. Perfect example, Chris Carson. He catches passes in the NFL. He caught nothing at Oklahoma State. It's literally just a product of the offense in general, more so than like something about Chuba. Like, typically, like, Chuba's kind of on the slender side, more of a home run threat guy. Those guys typically can catch the ball a little bit.
Yeah, right.
So, like, I mean, he was like a former track athlete. I think that he's gonna be able to catch passes. Like, I think that was just like, you can't just like do like dominator rating and then just like that's the only thing that matters. You have to like apply a little more context. I think that Chuba Hubbard was a perfect example of that.
I also think sometimes we are so quick to say what players can and cannot do. Like, I would really like. I feel pretty comfortable now saying Rojo can't catch the ball, but like I wasn't going to write that off when he first came into the league, right? I mean, even my favorite example this year is everybody. It's so funny to me because he was electric in the receiving game at Clemson, but Travis Etienne is not a natural pass catcher. He has talked about it. His Clemson teammates talked about it, that he has crappy hands. He doesn't have naturally good hands. He not like a very good natural route runner or whatever, but he worked his tail off to become that because they needed him, and he knew he needed that for his pro career. But like, everybody comes in, oh, he's this electric, pass catcher out of the backfield. And I'm like, well, kind of, but also like he's still not that good at it, Yep. But we have we've decided that he can do it, and we have decided that Chuba can't. It's always such an interesting dynamic.
I remember writing that RotoWorld blurb when I was a part-timer on the college football section like 3 years ago. Like, there was a RotoWorld blurb that like Travis Etienne like doesn't know how to catch, and I remember that was me who wrote that. And like then like a couple of years later, he's like said he was using like the jugs machine all day, and then he can catch passes. So yeah, totally. Like, let's not forget, these are NFL athletes. Like, these guys could catch the ball most likely. So I think that Chuba Hubbard will do just fine.
And to counter your Geo point, I'm not sure that Rojo or Fournette can catch the ball particularly well. So I do think Geo might catch a few passes. He's just never going to carry the ball. Like, he might carry it less than James White. He might carry it less than James White did.
Fun fact about Giovanni Bernard: whoever wins Best Ball Mania 2 is going to make more money than Gio Bernard this year. So like,
that is good.
They gave Fournette like $4 million and Gio like $880,000.
That's amazing. I did not know that. Do you have a? My computer's not plugged in. Do you have a preference on any of these? I'm probably going to take OJ Howard, but do you have a preference on any of these late round tight ends?
I would go Hayden Hurst, because if Kyle Pitts went down for some reason, he would be kind of like the number 2. So there's a ceiling play there. I know you disappointed last year, but and he's gonna be on the field with 12 personnel. He's gonna be the inline guy, so he's not gonna be that enticing. But there's a path, one Kyle Pitts ankle roll away from him being like a top 12, top 15 guy. So
I still am holding out hope for OJ Howard, and I should probably just give it up. But I still feel like obviously the pretty devastating injury that he suffered, but I still don't buy that Gronk isn't washed. Like, I still think that Gronk is washed, and I think that OJ Howard can play. So like, I'm typically correlating that guy, right? Like I talked about, I just took Dan Arnold a couple hours ago at that spot. But I do think there are a few guys with some upside there, right? Hurst, it's typically through injury, but even then, like, Hurst is going to play. I think OJ Howard's going to play. Dawson Knox is apparently working with a hand-eye coordination specialist in the offseason. I just discovered the other day. So I don't know if I can take the guy who doesn't.
I'm out on Dawson Knox, man. They signed Emmanuel Sanders so they could run 4 wide, and Dawson Knox is just like not. He's just not it.
That is actually a point, like with the whole Gabe Manny thing, people are arguing over this. And I'm like, they ran 4 wide a ton last year. And I think we feel decent that Dawson Knox is not particularly good. They have 4 wide receivers. They can just play 4 wide receivers.
It's possible that Emmanuel Sanders pays off his ADP, even if Gabe Davis is like the actual number 3. Like that's like still possible just because they're going to rotate. Emmanuel Sanders, if any of those guys gets hurt, Emmanuel Sanders can play the slot. He can play X. He can play flanker. He fills in all those spots. I think that Emmanuel Sanders, I've come around to, like I'm throwing out the age model. The age model is already baked into the ADP. Like I'll just take the value.
That part I agree with. Like I can be a little bit of an ageist at times too, but I do think you have to like apply the cost, like the cost part of it. He was going, he's risen. Yeah, Manny has risen a little bit, a round or two over the last like month or whatever. But like he was going in like the 160s. Like he was going back with like real bad, like wide receivers that I don't even feel super comfortable we're going to make the team. Like is where he was going before.
And like we just can't double count the bad part. Like if the age is already factored in, if Jason Garrett's already factored in for the Giants guys, we can't just like then say like I'm totally out. Like if Emmanuel Sanders was 28, he wouldn't be being drafted where he is now. So like it's all factored in on an underdog right now. Yeah,
really true. So we can just look at this team. I mean, I think we had more fun just kind of talking as we were drafting than doing the actual drafting. But like this is, to me, I kind of like to not remove the names, but like when you just look at the general structure, this is how I would ideally like craft a team if I were doing it. And we were just kind of like scooping up value all along the way, right? You didn't see us really reaching for anybody like at any point in the draft, and we were actually getting value on like several players. And then just, whatever stacks fell to us, whatever, those mid-round running backs fell to us. And then you kind of do this. Like, this is what I'm doing, right? You see, like on here, I have 77 teams. I'm doing this type of thing 77 times. And hopefully eventually you land on that right combination.
Your running back construction is, if I was only drafting one running back early, it's exactly how you do it. You have Gus Edwards and James White should get you there a couple weeks. I'll rotate weeks. And then hopefully at certain parts of the season, Josh Jacobs misses a couple games. Christian McCaffrey misses a couple games. And all of a sudden those guys pay off with a couple weeks too. So I think that roster construction part was perfect.
Yep. I totally agree. And just you kind of brought it up earlier, thinking about the archetypes and how the archetypes of players and how they all fit together, I think is just like, it's like, it should be logical, but it's like a lost art. So I'm glad we kind of got to be able to do that. I guess we are winding down here, and you've been grinding shows now for like multiple hours in a row, trivia, drafts, all sorts of stuff. And I'm grilling you on prospects.
Yeah, you're totally fine. It's just fun.
It's probably nap time for you, but dude, thanks for coming on. That was a blast. Is there anything you want to pump? You got anything that you need to put out there? Any new content coming? Any new underdog contest? Anything you want to promote?
There will be a new underdog contest coming up shortly. Some of you guys will enjoy it. And then I'm at Hayden Winks on Twitter. Josh Norris and I have the podcast Underdog Football Show. If you type in Underdog Fantasy on YouTube, you'll find our channel. That's where all of our content will be. And if you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, you're missing out. My promo code is Hayden or Hayden Winks. Go use that. You can find a million other promo codes. Use whatever. Just go join us.
Yeah, use whatever promo code. We got promo code Grinders. There's some other clown on Twitter. There's some other clown on Twitter that is constantly putting his promo code out there. They're everywhere. But you do need to be drafting. And if you're drafting in the puppy, you better get with it, because it is going to be filled in like a week. I'm sure something else will open up after, but the puppy has been a lot of fun, and the drafts are flying. I never thought, just to close, I never thought we would get to the point where it's the first week of July and there's this massive best ball contest, and I can just at any point, like 3 a.m., noon, 8 a.m., doesn't matter. I can click, go enter, and it fills, and I can draft whenever I want.
Yeah, it's crazy how liquid it is this early on. So, that's a credit to the Underdog marketing team for really posting all this stuff and partnering with everybody. But yeah, no, if you want to find a draft, there's a price point for everybody, and there's different types of contests. Go play around with the 3-man contest and rookies and sophomores. I think that fewer people are making content about that stuff. I think that if you're like just trying to grind ROI stuff, go do that. If you're trying to go buy a new car, do Best Ball Mania 2 or the puppy.
Awesome advice. Perfect thing to close it with. All right, guys. I think I'm out. My schedule's all thrown off from the holiday. I don't think I'm doing any shows. No shows for you tomorrow. Everybody gets to go enjoy their weekend, and I think you'll be seeing me sometime early. Hayden and I again sometime early next week. So until then,
That's right.
we will catch you guys later, and we are out of here.